I am a man of Pounder's pomade. I've seen matted beards all my days. I bid farewell to old beard oils. They don't work like Pounder's pomade. Good morning, everyone. It is 10/15/2019. You are watching The Cutting Edge on NYSTV. Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good Sukkot. If you are celebrating Sukkot this week, you guys go. It has been a chilly one outside, but it's nice to be inside and doing a show. We have a special show for you guys this morning. I just want to bring up a few things before we get into it. We're going to be talking about Twitter war going on. We're going to be talking about gender neutral Air Canada. We're going to be talking about President Z, who's not happy right now over with the folks in Hong Kong, but we're going to get to that here in just a few moments. Before we do, I have a very special guest coming on this morning, Mr. Nate Wolf. I'm going to be bringing him on here just a few moments, but before I do, I want to give you guys a couple of updates of what's going on. Of course, I want to do a little special presentation from my sponsor. Be right back.
Don't forget, go and check out NYSTV.org. This is a place where you can find our exclusive documentaries, What If the Earth is Flat? The Book of Enoch series, Dark Covenant, Secret of Secrets, Vampires, Lies of the Immortal, and more, only on NYSTV.org.
That's NYSTV.org. You see the NYSTV.org at the bottom of the screen. Of course, we here on YouTube have over 1,000 videos. If you guys are studying out or researching a biblical topic, you more than likely can find it down below for free right here on YouTube. And if you would, please consider, prayerfully consider subscribing to our channel. And please hit that likes up button. We're trying to beat the algorithms here on YouTube. And of course, you know what they've been doing with the shadow banning. It does help, and I really do appreciate it. Also would like you guys to leave comments down below. I do read those, good and bad. So yeah, I do. And I appreciate you guys hanging tough with us this morning or every morning on The Cutting Edge. Of course, we didn't have a show yesterday. It was a high Sabbath. We, as a family, was observing Sukkot, and we're doing so all weekend long. Just a few more announcements. I want to direct your guys' attentions to FOJCradio.com, FOJCradio.com. Of course, that is David and Donna Mae Carrico's ministry. They are a very important part of NYSTV's ministry, so please, if you guys would go over and check them out, even on the YouTube channel as well. I know Patricia and I do a show every Friday night called The Remnant Restoration. That goes on after David and Donna's show at 6 p.m. Central Time on Fridays. That's FOJCradio.com. I do have to bring up, because I cannot not bring it up, there's a bunch of guys in Arkansas somewhere celebrating Sukkot in kilts. And of course, they're part of the Isaiah4610.com conference. That's coming up in February 2020. You got plenty of time to prayerfully consider going and making arrangements for that. Lots of time to you just decide if you'd like to go. I know NYSTV will be there. Patricia and I will be there. And we're looking forward to the Isaiah4610.com. If you sign up for the email, you can stay updated on conference happenings. Also, to Chris and Liz Bailey over on Take on the World TV, and you can subscribe to them over on YouTube. They are forever changers of my coffee in this house and some of my diet. Of course, Patricia keeps slowly switching it, and it's due to Chris and Liz Bailey's influence. Now I'm drinking organic coffee. It took me about a month to get used to that, but thank you, Chris and Liz, for that. And if you guys, you know, being a healthcare in the healthcare field for like 20 years, critical care area, ER, ICU, open heart unit. I've been through the rounds. As far as healthcare workers, Chris and Liz Bailey probably know more than your average healthcare worker in the hospitals. That's their passion, that they want to teach people, and you can find them over on Take on the World TV on YouTube. Before we get into our guest and I bring my guest on, I want to do what we always do every morning, and we try to do it every morning before we get into the news. I just want to ask the Father that His will be done in this program, that His words be spoken, that His shalom comes through, and we just have fun under the banner of Yahweh, and we lift this show up to Yeshua in His name. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for praying for us and staying with us. But without further ado, I know, my next guest has been in the ministry for nearly 30 years, serving Yeshua's communities in 5 different states, guys. He's been in through 5 different states. He's been a firefighter, a social worker, a police officer. He's been a biblical teacher for nearly 30 years. And he is showing up this morning early on the cutting edge. I want to bring on Nate Wolf, the author of Fired for Truth. Good morning, Nate. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, John. Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. I think my eyeballs are finally working now. I woke up this morning, it was one of those deals where your eyeballs feel like they're kind of glued shut. It's like, man, I got to get these puppies woke up here for this show. So happy to be here.
That John Pounders and John Hall, they're absolutely nuts. What are they thinking doing an early morning show?
Well, maybe I got some Pounders pomade in my eyeballs last night or something. I'm not sure, but I'm sure for the rest of the day, I'll be seeing more clearly.
I don't know. John, he doesn't sell Pounders pomade. He does take it to conferences and stuff like that, but he's really, I don't think he's into it. But as much as I sit here and talk about I am obsessed with Pounders pomade. People know that already.
Oh yeah,
it's the greatest thing ever. So, and of course, if you guys haven't checked it out, Nate Wolf joined John Pounders on Pounders Live. You can go back and check that out over on YouTube. It was a great interview, and I brought Nate Wolf on this morning for 2 reasons. One, I want to talk about his truth, Fired for Truth. I want to talk about his truth, Fired for Truth. I want to talk about his book, Fired for Truth. I want to pick his brains on some of the topics that's going on in the news today. Really, I'm going to pull this up. Sorry about this. I'm like working everything. I need what Joe Rogan has, and I'm not a Joe Rogan fan, but he's got somebody doing the back end. But this right here is Fired for Truth. This is a book I'm talking about, and it definitely lays out the journey he and his family's been on for the last almost nearly 30 years, especially this last year or so. Of course, he and his family were leading a ministry, and he went to a certain conference, I believe. And after the elders at his church found out, he was called on the carpet. And that's what ignited this entire research and fire underneath yours and Mrs. Wolf's behinds, it seems.
Absolutely.
Like. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I tell you, this this whole time that I've been ministering, hindsight is 20/20, as they say. When I started ministry, I thought, I just want to be this congregational guy, this church building guy, and I believe that we did some good work all those years, that there was a lot of fruit. However, when everything happened, back in spring of 2017, when I kind of got Bible smacked and flat smacked by Robbie Davidson's Global Lie documentary, and that got me down the rabbit hole, and particularly with biblical cosmology. And, less than a year later, or a little more than a year later, then we are at Take on the World 18. So, probably 14 months, 15 months later. And we were just blown away by some of the things that we saw and heard there, and meeting a lot of these speakers in person that we had been listening to and watching for over a year. And we were pumped up, and I was excited to hopefully a few weeks later at one of the next leadership meetings to share some enthusiasm about a study of creation, and hopefully broach the subject of Genesis 1 with my elders and my co-minister, and that didn't happen. I had prayed about that, and we had prayed to seek the Father's will. We just had this very strong, I hate to use the word feeling, because now I look back on it and I believe it was the Holy Spirit, but we just knew that there was something that the Father had for us to do in sharing these truths. It was time to get off the couch and quit being a consumer and start sharing what we've learned with others. But we didn't know how to do that. And one thing that we did know, John, is that we had made mistakes in the past of launching forward on our own volition, our own will, our own wisdom. And we did not want to do that. So as we literally, before we pulled out of the parking lot at Take on the World 18, we had prayed, Father, show us if there's something you want us to do. And in the meantime, we're just going to pray. We're not going to do anything but pray. And that's what we did. And we were thinking, hey, let's do a 40-day prayer thing, which we'd never done before. And it didn't take 40 days. It was more like 20 or 21 days. And got a text message out of the blue that I would be meeting with the elders in an hour one morning. And that was a shocker. And the rest is history. But I was fired within the first 7 minutes of that meeting. And within 15 minutes after I went into the conference room, I was literally packing up my office and packing up all my books. That was quite a morning.
So when you walked into that meeting, did they tell you prior to you going in what was going to be talked about, or was you going in blinded?
I had a suspicion that it possibly could have had something to do with the conference, but at the time, we hadn't shared publicly where we were going, and we hadn't even told our kids exactly what we were doing. We told them we were going to the Sandusky, Ohio area for a few days. As a couple, we needed some R&R anyway, and it was kind of a conference/couples weekend for us, and someone at the church had overheard one of our kids talking about what city we were in. I guess you can't say city, a little burg, little hamlet on the shores of Lake Erie, Vermilion, Ohio. And someone had started apparently Googling that and trying to snoop around and find out what we were doing. And gossip ensued and spread like a wildfire in the church. And unfortunately, it affected the elders. They got caught up in the emotional aspect of things. And, I think that's kind of evidenced by the fact, John, that after 7.5 years of faithful service to the church, not perfect service, but faithful service, genuine service, how the conversation about my firing was initiated was a simple text message saying, you will be meeting with us in an hour. And so to answer your question, I called one of the other elders because I'll be honest, I was pretty hacked off at the elder that texted me. I thought, you didn't even call me? Like, this is so important that 3 of the 5 elders are still working full time. Obviously, they cleared their schedules to come to this meeting. And all you could muster for my service was a text message. So I called an elder that I was more close to, that was a very balanced and gentle man, loving man. And I said, hey, what's the deal? And it was like he was a totally different person. Obviously, he was on a mission, and he wouldn't tell me. And I was upset because this wasn't my first rodeo. I had been fired from a church previously for standing up to the leadership for not taking their responsibility, and had nothing to do with flat earth. But anyway, you could imagine a lot of elderships don't like that when you point stuff out that they're not doing.
Well,
So anyway, long story short, I told this elder, I said, look, if you're not going to tell me what this is about, I said, I'm not coming to the meeting. I said, I don't like ambushes. I said, nobody likes ambushes. It's totally unfair. I said, you guys have known me for a while. Just tell me what's up. I'll come to the meeting and we'll hash it out. And he said, well, hold on a second. So he called, conferred with his other elders. He called me back and he said, we will all be at the building at 9 a.m. and it's up to you if you want to show up. So I said, wow. I said, so this is an ambush. And his exact words, and I was floored. To his credit, at least he was honest. He said, yes, you are being ambushed. I could not believe that a shepherd of the church would say that to me, but that's how it went down. And we had the other crazy thing was we had an opening prayer to our meeting. And at first that kind of calmed my spirit just a minute, because I thought, okay, we just had a prayer. Okay, maybe I'm overreacting. No, I wasn't. The very next words were, okay, opening prayer's done. Now the Inquisition begins. And I felt like I was being interviewed under a heat lamp by the FBI. The conversation actually started. It has come to our attention that on August 24th through the 26th, you went to the Take on the World conference in Vermillion, Ohio. That's literally how that conversation started.
You horrible, horrible person, you.
Busted.
We got busted. It's almost like, we live in a world, we're going to be talking about tweets later, and the president using tweets to fire people, to let people know, we're going to put sanctions on Turkey. You got the same thing. It's almost, we live in that culture where it's, men don't act like men anymore. They can't come to you face to face and be honest with you. At least one of them he said, this is an ambush.
It was kind of like, I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Who ordered the code red? I mean, I really had to lean on this guy to get him to finally say, yeah, dude, it's an ambush,
Well, you and Miss Wolf had what I call the Paul moment, where you're struck down. You had already been serving the ministry. The Father's already blessing you. He's already giving you the knowledge how to deal with people. You've had the experience over 30 years. I mean, you worked as a police officer. You were a firefighter, social worker. You've worked in the ministry, part-time, full-time. And you've seen many different cultures as far as, you worked in Alaska, didn't you? I think I read that in the book all the way through. And now the Father has brought you here, but he's giving you a Paul moment. A very religious man. Father loved, what he was doing, didn't like the killing and the brutal, but you weren't doing any of that. But you had a Paul moment.
Yeah.
You and Mrs. Wolf had a Paul moment at Take on the World. And it changed you enough to deal with that situation. The Father knew it was going to happen. You didn't, but the Father did. And it's almost like you guys just took off after that.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, there were so many confirmations, John, from the beginning. And honestly, I was floored because I made the first phone call that I made was to Rick Hummer, because I had met him at the conference. He seemed like just such a genuine guy. And actually, the first call I made was to Chad Taylor to tell him that I got fired, because he had prayed with me at the conference. I had shared with him this, this burden of truth, and what do we do with this? And he was like shocked, but he said, maybe this is the Father's answer to your prayer. And so then I called Rick Hummer, and he was just like, dude, you don't understand how big this is, how important this is. I'm like, I understand how big this is. I just got canned, like there goes more than half of my family's support. There goes 7 years of ministry and dedication. There goes, our whole church family. Every single reason for why we came to Ohio was wrapped up in this congregation. But what he meant was that he recognized that the Father was doing something big, and I didn't know it. I just was calling for some encouragement, right? Because he seemed like the kind of heart that would listen. And so I had messaged him on Facebook, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, call me." So we talked for like an hour and a half. And when we got off, he's like, "You don't understand." He's like, "We have a lot of the." Some people say, "Oh, there's no leaders." There are leaders in the truth community, speakers, leaders, whatever, content providers. They said, "We've been praying for this to happen." And he's like, "No." He's like, "We weren't praying that you would get fired, but we were praying that a minister who did get fired," because there had been others who had been fired before me, for actually sharing truth from the pulpit. I hadn't actually preached on this stuff. I hadn't shared it in the church. That's the crazy thing, was that I hadn't even done anything publicly with this. And he was like, you've taken a stand. You didn't back down. He's like, you got fired, and now you're asking questions. How do I get the message out? So he ended the call. He's like, I got to call everybody I know. He's like, I'm going to call Davidson. I'm going to call Skiba. I'm going to, So I'm like, I don't know why this guy's talking about calling all these people. Why would these people care about me? They don't even know me. And so then I called and left a message on Chris Bailey's voicemail. It was their anniversary dinner night. And I leave this message, "Hey man, I just got fired for going to your conference." I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't trying to put a downer on anything, but Chris was ignoring his phone because he's out, with Liz and trying to enjoy their time together. And I guess Robbie Davidson was blowing up his phone. And so Chris was like, well, I got to call Robbie. What's going on? And Robbie's like, hey, have you heard about this Nate Wolf guy? He got fired for going to your conference. He's a preacher, blah, blah, blah. And Chris is like, what? So needless to say, I had a ton of support. I mean, all kinds of people were calling me, or Rick Hummer was like, texting me all these contacts. He's like, Robbie Davidson wants you to call him. Rick Hummer Rob Skiba would like for you to call him. And these guys were just encouraging me and saying, man, the Father has given you a new ministry. And I'm like, what? I just got fired. Like, I don't know what's going on.
It's almost like the Father telling Abraham, leave your father's house and go.
Yeah.
You don't know where you're going, but you're just going. And here you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now you were talking before the show, we were talking about a new program you and your wife are doing. And I'd like folks to be aware of that. If you tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, actually, it's one of the things I'm most excited about recently. For years and years, my wife and I, Jennifer, we have been talking about doing some kind of ministry or sharing some kind of truth together because, she actually has a master's in social work. I did some social work, although I didn't have a degree in social work. I had experience, but she has a master's in social work. She's a licensed private practice counselor in the state of Ohio. She's got her supervisory S on the end of all her credentials and for social work. So she's done a lot of stuff, working with people, working with individuals, counseling families, counseling couples. And, with my years, 27-ish years of ministry and doing counseling with folks, we said, hey, obviously the Father has given us a complementary relationship here in so many ways. We have some experience now, let's share with folks. And so we didn't know what that would look like other than let's just do a show together and let's try to do some weekly uploads on various topics. And so we decided, we came up with the name of the show. It's called Life Matters with Nate and Jen. And Life Matters is a play on words. Obviously, life is important. It's a gift. It's wonderful. But there are matters in life that are so important for especially believers. That's the angle we're coming at here, is we're trying to encourage believers, as married couples, as parents. And so we decided, look, we can talk about marriage issues. We can talk about family issues. We can talk about careers, spiritual warfare, challenges in life for seeking truth, all kinds of topics. And so about 3 weeks or so ago, we uploaded an intro video sharing what we had planned to do. And then last week, we did our first video on my YouTube channel, Fired for Truth. And that was dealing with important areas of marriage communication. We got such a great response from people. We were excited to do another one this week, which will be uploaded tonight at 7 p.m. on my YouTube channel. And we're going to be talking about boundaries as married couples, boundaries with others, friends, coworkers, members of the opposite sex in particular, and why it's important to have those boundaries, and especially with like social media and, things like that, and how we can stay faithful to the Father, to his will, to his word, relating to marriages, and how we can be faithful to our spouses and our children. So that's what's going on with that. And we're going to try to upload a new topic every single week. So hopefully it will be a huge encouragement to others.
Amen. Patty and I, we marry you guys. We've been near, I think almost 30 years now. And there's a desperate need of listening to married couples who have experience, who have decades of experience. And I think that's needed, especially in the truther movement. And you see a lot of questions on posts and threads. My spouse is not a believer. I'm a believer. What do we do for not believers? There's all kinds of questions for married couples. And I think that show right there on Fired for Truth, and I'm going to be talking about it every single morning and directing people over there.
Awesome.
I think that's
so
a great show to have. Now, I know Patricia and I do the Remnant Restoration on Friday nights, and we have always done Bible studies, but not like this, where we sit down together and hash out word for word, line by line, precept by precept together as husband and wife. And it has been
Yeah.
a serious blessing to both of us in our marriage. The Father has woken us up. We've been doing this for almost 5 years, following out the Father's instructions through and by Christ Jesus.
Nice.
That's what I like to call it. We're just doing what He's asked us to do. But I think, now that I'm aware of it, we're going to be watching the show, and of course, I'm going to be talking
Awesome.
about it every morning. So that's a fantastic idea, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, and we always give the disclaimer, we're not claiming to be the experts. We just have recognized that it's important for us to share our experience and our expertise with the talents, the professions, the ministry that the Father has given us. We feel like we would be, shutting up this important information if we didn't get it out. And so, we're not perfect, but we are trying to encourage others. And some of the stuff we share is mistakes we made. Here's how we came to this wisdom. It wasn't because Nate and Jen had this perfect marriage forever. It's because we've been there and done that, got the T-shirt, the hat, all of that. So
Well,
I hope it's a blessing.
is people, if you're in the ministry or you're serving the public in certain ways, of course, experience is everything, guys, and we're not
Yeah.
perfect. None of us are perfect. However, I want to go to those folks who have been married for a couple of decades. Not saying you're old, Nate. I'm sorry, didn't say that. I'm just saying you look for the experienced and you test
Yeah.
people's fruits. And you guys have been married how long?
We've been married 27 years. We celebrated 27 years this last July 25th. So, it was really not too long before Take on the World 19. We celebrated 27 years together. So we got married young, right out of high school, and we have 4 children. Oldest is 21, youngest is 15. And so we're only 2 more years, John, away from graduating our last kid from high school. And let me tell you, we have mixed emotions, more so Jennifer, because you know how moms get, but we're excited to be done with the high school stuff. It's been a challenge. Let's
Oh.
just say that.
Are you guys homeschooling?
No, we are not. And that's, I know homeschooling can have its own rewards and challenges as well. But, we live in a small town where we're the outsiders who came in. We're not the local people who've been here forever. There's a lot of folks that are connected. There's a lot of politics at the high school. There's a lot of good things at this high school as well. But, could you imagine how difficult after the year that we've been through, being a kid going to your local high school where some of the kids from the youth group of the church that fired you also attend high school? So our kids are tough, man, and hats off to them. They have been strong in their faith, and they haven't wavered, and they're coming on strong. And it was kind of interesting, John, because the flesh sometimes wants to strike back and gloat and all this stuff, but we've tried to stay humble through this process, not hold grudges, pray for the church, pray for those who persecuted us. But this last weekend, our youngest son was actually he got voted onto homecoming court. And so we're at this football game Friday night. It was kind of surreal. We're at this football game Friday night, and we are escorting him out. And there's, 5 ladies and 5 guys that were selected. And so we're on the football field, and a lot of people from the church attend these Friday night football games. And so,
man.
after you get fired for a whole year, we're running into people at the grocery store, at the gas station, at restaurants, and yes, even the elders that fired me multiple times. So, for a while, we were kind of getting tired of that. And we were almost like, man, we got to leave out of here. And then we're like, no, this is our home.
Right.
We didn't do anything wrong. We're here, and you can fire me, but you can't kick me out of your town. And I pay taxes here. We're citizens. So we're going to live our life. We're going to try not to have any conflicts. We're going to look towards some reconciliation. But it's kind of funny because, we're everywhere. The wolf pack, the wolf family is everywhere, and they can't get away from, I guess, an understanding of what went down. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe down the road, that will turn into some repentance for what happened.
And well, I'm sitting here thinking as a married couple, and of course, Patricia and I have
Yeah.
been married nearly the same amount of years as you guys, and you're going through this together, and
Yeah.
and your kids are going through it through high school. Of course, their dad just came back from Take on the World. Of course, it is a biblical cosmology conference. However, what those folks that brought you in, the elders failed to understand it is that it's not all about the biblical cosmology. There's more truth
Yes.
as far as biblical words spoken at that conference than there is flat Earth. There's a
Yeah.
lot of mixture, but you hear the word of God at this place, and I'm sorry that you guys went through that. And again, I'm not sorry because the Father forced you out.
Yeah.
Forced you out of your comfort zone, and now you're out and you're absolutely ministering to people and getting the gospel out there, and you're talking to people who are atheists that don't believe in a
Mhm.
God. And of course, you're able, because of your research and your 27 years of ministry, biblical school, theological school, and now you're looking at the entire Bible as a whole and going, hey guys, we need to look at this a little bit more seriously. And I'm glad he
Yeah.
did. I'm glad he pushed you out the
Oh, yeah.
door.
Well, that's amazing, John, because when I got fired and all this stuff happened with my YouTube channel and a new ministry, I was like, okay, I guess the Father has inserted me into this flat Earth thing. Well, it goes much deeper than that because, as you know, about 10, 11 months ago, we started asking ourselves the question, well, what's the deal with these Torah observant folks that we met at Take on the World and keeping Sabbath and feast days? And it's like we started asking questions. We started fervently praying about that. And we kind of shifted some of our focus away from flat Earth to also be trying to take the same approach with these things that we did with flat Earth and look at the Bible, pray fervently, ask for wisdom, for clarity. We just, Father, we just want to know the truth. We want to follow you, serve you, please you. And that second journey, as I, shared at Take on the World, one of my sessions was about what I called a journey to the Father's truth. And I shared some of that on Pounders Live when I was down in Indiana with John and his family. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of doors opened. In fact, I'm tickled to death. I met the Woodsons at Take on the World 19, and they approached me a few weeks ago and asked me to come and speak at the conference in February. So
Oh, fantastic. I did not
I'm
know
very
that.
excited. Yeah, I'm
That's
very
great.
excited. I'm going to share my journey to the Father's truth. And then they said, if there is an additional session available, would you want it? And I said, absolutely. I said, I have no idea what I would talk about at the time, but I said, I'm sure the Father will find something for me to address. And I have some ideas. So if that additional slot stays available, I will definitely seek to fill that with something that's been on my heart. So I'm very excited about it. Planning on Jennifer coming.
Oh,
Jennifer can't make most of the conferences I go to because she's still working full time, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and she's got limited vacation time. But I told her, I said, mark this on your calendar. You will be coming to Arkansas with me in February. So
excellent. I know, Patty and I went for the first time last year, and it was an absolute blessing to both of us. And that
awesome.
will be, and of course, I had avoided Take on the World conference for years. When they first, and I just crowds in general and being in
Yeah.
the ER, I was full force in the ER, just dealing with 1 and 2 people is about all I could handle. And
Yeah.
dealing with a Catholic hospital at that with priests running around, you got a crazy ER nurse with ZZs running around the ER. But
Wow.
anyways, I'd be looking forward to meeting you guys, especially
Yeah.
Patty, because I got to meet Miss Wolf at the SRA conference, the International SAR conference
Yes. Yes.
in
Yes.
Ohio. And it was a
Yeah.
blessing. It was very busy, but I got to meet her, and I
Yeah.
really love Patricia to meet her as well. And so I didn't know that. That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
I've got to say it. I've got to say it, Nate. What
Mm.
if they want us to wear kilts, which they are really skirts?
Yeah.
I know those guys are watching right now. They're skirts.
I don't know. I'd have to pray on that. I have to pray on that. But
Uh,
my wife got me this awesome shirt. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a Russ Dizdar shirt. It's called 10 Million Fierce. And there's a website, 10millionfierce.com, but it is something that Russ started in 2018 about ministry and intercessory prayer and spiritual warfare and evangelism. And she's like, "Hey, I got you a new shirt." So I thought I would wear the 10 million fierce shirt today. Plus, it's blue, so it matched my blue Take on the World 19 hat. But yeah, she went to the conference. I guess I could have gone, but I decided, look, I want Jennifer to be at this conference, with her background. In fact, Jennifer is becoming quite proficient in the area of trauma and trauma informed care. And, she works with folks that provide services for adult disabled individuals. And a lot of times those folks are, manipulated, preyed upon. There's a big human trafficking situation. Toledo, Ohio is pretty much the United States human trafficking, headquarters because of all the interstates and the turnpike. And I wanted her to be able to go to this conference. And I kind of felt like this might be a conference that really awakens her to maybe start sharing about these topics. And so who knows what the father could do with that. But I decided, it's hard for mama to go out of town and leave the kids, right? And so I decided that I would hold down the fort so she could have that experience. And
Well,
it was a powerful experience for her. And who
it
knows?
I have to say that was an eye opener for John and I when we went
Yeah,
down there. Huge, and it set a fire underneath both of
yeah,
us. We want, our desire to get involved in SRA ministry and
yeah,
ministries like Russ Distar's and Tom Dunn's set a fire underneath us, and be looking out for some upcoming things from Now UCTV in that
cool.
direction. And I'm praying over John Pounders as he's making decisions, as he's networking, and I'm praying over the ministry, and I'm all on board on doing whatever it takes and wherever the Father leads us. And I'm glad
Yeah.
she got that experience. Yeah, I've got to say about social workers in the hospital setting. I don't know
Mm.
if she works in the hospital setting or not.
Yeah, she works for the county, so she's the training coordinator for Lucas County. So she schedules, she either does the trainings or runs them and brings in speakers that talk about various subjects. Trauma is one of the subjects, but all
Fantastic.
kinds of subjects.
Well, I do know in the hospital setting, they do tie social workers' hands with red tape.
Yes.
They, the medical system, the medical industry has been weaponized, and they tie the hands of those who are trying to help folks, whether they're geriatric patients or those patients who come in who've been traumatized by individuals or a traumatic injury or whatever it
Mm.
is, and they try to do that long-term care. Well, social workers' hands are being tied by government red tape or the hospital's protocols and policies to where
Yes.
the hospitals say we're all about long-term care, we're all about long-term healing, yet they tie the hands of those folks who try to get them help, whether it's
Yeah.
at a rehab facility or a nursing home or physical therapy, whatever it is, and they tie
Yeah.
their hands, and it's all about money. And
Yeah.
I bet she has been fit for tide on
Oh, yeah.
several different occasions trying to deal with the government and hospitals and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
A
So
lot of times she'll come home from a shift and we'll just have to kind of decompress. We'll go sit on the back porch or whatever. And of course, you understand big pharma plays into that. A lot of times where they will try to offer quote help is they'll say, well, let's medicate them, instead of addressing the real true underlying issues, which are physical and emotional, but they're also spiritual, as you know. And so it has been a battle for her. There is a system in place in the county that is so frustrating for her, and but she tries to to do her best every day, and she is, I think, a force for good there. And so I actually encouraged her to maybe in the future do some videos about trauma and trauma informed care, and even something relating to trauma in churches and congregations and fellowships. And so I kind
that's
of
a
been
topic
bugging.
that's not discussed often.
Exactly. And I told her, I said, you've got information, uh, that is much needed and a perspective, as a member of this truth community and biblical community. And I've actually encouraged her. I think, you need to consider, in all of her busyness, imagine her finding time to write a book, and perhaps trauma would at least be a topic addressed, if not perhaps a book about trauma and trauma informed care, and the all of the implications of that. But you're right. I mean, it's fighting the system, and she does what she can. And so, I pray for her a lot each day as she's in that fray.
Well, people have asked me on several occasions, John, why don't you talk more about your ER experience, your experience in the ICUs and stuff? Look, guys, I have not seen anybody die in over 9 or 10 weeks. I've not seen anybody shot. I've not seen anybody stabbed. And that's the last thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Though
yeah.
in this instance, I will say, if I do talk about healthcare, I talk about the fact that it's weaponized. As Nate Wolf is talking about his wife being in a social worker, healthcare ties hands, and pharma is a big part of it. In the ER, we put a Band-Aid on it and ship them to where they need to go. We patch them up and then go. I've seen a lot of trauma go in and throughout there. The number one thing in the ERs that is failing people is in the mental stability area as far as mental health goes. There's many times I've seen patients come in that have OD'd, and of course it is a drug problem, but it's also a spiritual problem that is not being addressed in hospitals. And if it is, it's usually under Catholic regimes or Jesuit regimes. However, social workers, ER nurses, and the like, their hands are tied, especially doctors in the ER, because the system will gobble them up. They'll do a little interview on a television with, somebody in a mental facility, and then they're shipped off via ambulance, and it is sterile, it is cold, it is non-ministering, and it is devastating. And I hope your wife takes up the cause and talks about this issue, because it's bad out there.
Yeah.
And from her perspective, because she sees the red tape, she sees what you have to go through and phone calls to make, money that has to be, budgeted. And of course, the system fails people, and she's right there at the front lines, and she knows what's going on. So it'd be interesting to see if she takes that cause up.
Yeah, well, I she'll probably be, if she's not watching this live, she'll definitely watch the playback. I'm sure she's watching this live, so put a little pressure on her. But, I thought that a good stepping stone to maybe developing that in the near future is our show that we do together, because, for over a year, I've been in front of the camera, I've spoken at conferences, and I'm maybe a little bit more outgoing in that arena. She's a little bit more, less in the spotlight. And so this is good for us to do this together, and to get her used to, sharing content and being part of online discussions. And so we'll see what the Father has in store for her. Selfishly, personally, I would love to help to get her released from that 9 to 5 grind, eventually, be able to do full-time ministry, like I've been doing, with me, on her own, whatever that looks like. And I pray that that's the Father's will, but I know that it's been important for her to be in this field and to work in these settings, because it has given her an awareness that she would not have had otherwise. So, maybe she's been in the trenches for that purpose, and who knows what the future will hold. But we do know that he's starting to use her, in some of the things that we're doing together. So that's kind of exciting.
Well, Patricia and I both, of course, Patricia's a speech pathologist. Of course, I am a former ER nurse. I guess you never retire from nursing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I see somebody out in a restaurant, I'm going, oh no, I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing. I don't know nothing. But at the same time, I would love to speak with both of you on. Patricia and I both have. Patricia's got 30 years as a speech pathologist
Awesome.
in the mentally and physically challenged arenas, and that's where her specialty is.
Okay.
She
Cool.
deals with a lot of speech path strokes and whatnot. She handles those traumatic brain injuries. She handles autism, dementia. That is her specialty. Mine is just ER nurse. We would love to talk to you guys about our experience, tell you about our, if you guys want to pick our brains, I'd love to talk to you guys
that'd be
about
cool. We should do that sometime, schedule time to chat.
I go on and rant here. We've been talking to Nate Wolf. He is the author of Fired for Truth. And where can people find this book, Nate?
Well, there's a couple of different ways you can find this book.
Put that up there.
You can go to lulu.com, Lulu.com, and you can just type in the search Fired for Truth, and my author page should pop up. It's very easy for international orders as well. That's where I like to try to push folks that are international. I've already sent some books internationally to the UK, a few different books, the Netherlands. It's just very user-friendly. You can choose your shipping, all of that. Also, I am with Sacred Word Publishing, so you can find my book there. Some people want like a signed copy. You can't get a signed copy through those outlets. You have to go directly through me. So you can message me at nate@firedfortruth.org, nate@firedfortruth.org, or on my Facebook. You can message me whenever I do have books in stock, then I can sign those and ship them out directly. But I tell you one thing, John, I'd like to share real quick is my website, because that has all kinds of information. FiredforTRUTH.org, FiredforTRUTH.org. There's a link, and actually there's a picture of my book on the website. You just click on that picture, it goes right to Lulu. There's a contact form so people can push information, messages to my email. And I have, my Patreon is there. You can click on that if somebody wants to help support my ministry monthly through Patreon. So firedfortruth.org is kind of the one-stop place for anything, Fired for Truth or Nate Wolf. And that's just very convenient for folks to get to those other, avenues. But I do have just a very few copies of my book in stock that I could sign for now. I'll probably order some more, although I just ordered 50 copies for Flat Earth International 19 in Dallas. And so I will have some copies there for those that will be going to that conference. I'm very excited. I'll be talking about biblical cosmology, of course, but I'm also going to end my main stage presentation at FEIC talking about getting to know the creator of the creation. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, I will be putting the link down below after the show, also on my Facebook page and on the fellowship page, so you can find Mr. and Mrs. Wolf. And I'm just going to call it Your All's Ministry, because I just see her slowly being moved into that role. And I think that's just wonderful, especially, being a married guy myself. We've talked about a lot of things this morning, and I wanted to segue into some of the news this morning, just get your take. And so what I'm going to do is just read some of the
speed round,
some of the goo and just blah that the news people have been talking about. And again, we're going to be putting that. If the moderators in the chat room could put up his website, I very much appreciate it. Thank you guys for being in there this morning and waking up so early and drinking your coffee with me and Nate. If you could put his website up in the chat room, very much appreciate it. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. So we're going to be starting off the first news reel. And of course, we're going to be talking about Trump's Twitter. It's almost like you getting text message from the elders. I mean, that's almost the culture that we live in. Nobody's man to man. Nobody wants to say anything face to face. We're not doing it biblically. We just do a text message, and then there you go. You're left with nothing, no voice. And so President Trump likes to start off that way. In this week's news, Speaker Nancy Pelosi officially launched the impeachment. Of course, we know it's a lopsided impeachment. They've not voted. They haven't given the Republicans any rights whatsoever to call subpoenas in or people to call. However, I've noticed one of the stories came in saying that President Trump's tweet, he usually tweeted 18 times a day. And of course, I've been following his Twitter account, and I can usually figure out what's going on before the news industry does, because he's telling us. And so since the impeachment inquiry has happened, his tweets have jumped to 36 tweets a day. So we're getting national news from President Trump 36 times a day. He is absolutely blowing up Twitter every single day. And so
I guess I need to pay more attention to his Twitter account.
It's absolutely nuts. I learned yesterday before the news, the Twitter came in. He said this in a tweet. He says, "I will soon be issuing an executive order authorizing the imposition of sanctions against the current and former officials of the government of Turkey." So he threw that out yesterday. Of course, it's been in the news, but he threw that out there before the news picked it up. And I'm like, yes,
Wow.
I got it before everybody else. But it's like he's gotten nuts. And of course, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, Instagram, Snapchat, it's a different culture that we lived in, that you and I grew up in.
Oh, yeah.
And it's molding everybody. Oh, thanks. Somebody put FiredforTRUTH.org in the chat room. Thank you, Starla.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So what do you think about, so you've not followed the president on Twitter at all?
A little bit. I'm not really a big Twitter fan. I know it's fast, but it's just hard. There's so much to follow. But I have seen in the news when he has tweeted certain things, and I mean he's got some real zingers, that he sent out there, and I guess he's very bold, and I haven't been following a lot of political stuff, to be honest with you. My focus has been elsewhere, but I definitely at least can respect the fact that he's not shy, and he says what he wants to say, and love him or hate him, he definitely gets information out quickly. He's definitely a master at using those sources, those outlets. And, I have a Twitter account, but I just have a handful of folks, and I tweet, a few times a week, nothing big. So I'm not really following so much the Twitter scene, but it is amazing to see how quickly he will address things using, Twitter.
I mean,
it's effective.
And you would be entertained. It would entertain you.
Yeah.
But it's set a precedence now. Most of Congress is tweeting out, and of course all the president candidates are tweeting out. Everybody's doing it now. You can find out what's going on before the major news sources do, just looking at their Twitter. And speaking of, for a shameful plug, I do have to say two things. One, the Pounders Pomade. I enjoy talking about Pounders Pomade because I like the can and I like what it does to my beard. I do. And I think I've talked John into making more of these and actually putting these out. So he is,
nice.
He and Miss Stephanie and a crew are working diligently to see that this happens. So yeah, I do enjoy talking about Pounders Pomade, and it is jokingly, but I absolutely use this, and I'm going to talk about it every day. Pounders Pomade. Two, I just want to say, for Twitter account, you'll notice down below, NYSTV, you can find us at Twitter there, and at Hall NYSTV, Twitter us, wherever you want. We're trying. John came up last two or 3 weeks ago. He says, "When's the last time I used Twitter?" I said, "I don't know." He looked at his count. It's been a long time it's sat dormant. So there you go. I'm putting it up. Now he's being forced to look at his Twitter feed. Now you guys know. All right. Yeah. So that was in the news. Of course, with your wife being a social worker, she'll be interested in this one. This came up yesterday on the Associated Press. 3 women who ran a fighting ring at North Carolina assisted living facility encouraged residents to get into physical altercations. Officials say staff members took videos of the fight, which led to one resident being strangled with her face turning red, and shared it on social media. Of course, Twitter it out with her face turned. They just Twittered it out and put it on Facebook. The employees let the fight happen because one of the residents always caused problems. The state says the incident wasn't documented in the resident's record, according to DHSS. Through the report, doesn't name the staff members. However, we found it here on the cutting edge. The Winston-Salem Journal identifies them as Tashia Deshwan Jordan, Tonika Yvonne Tyson, and Marilyn Letitia McKee. And I'm naming these people because they absolutely let these geriatrics fight with dementia. The state police arrested the 3 women this month and charged them with a misdemeanor. So this would be a social worker's nightmare. Wow. So apparently they let the residents with dementia and Alzheimer's fight and absolutely videoed it and took bets on this.
Wow, that's just crazy. I mean, even in today's society, you think that, things can't get worse or crazy things, we've seen it all. But I mean, this is just it's outrageous. It's shameful. I mean, it's straight up abuse. There's no way to sugarcoat that at all. And I think it shows, the people that are doing this, the people that caused this to happen. It shows where their hearts are. They must have very darkened hearts, and it's a very selfishly motivated world that we live in. But John, I imagine that the social media outlets, having the ability to record things and put videos up, I mean, that has really exacerbated this whole thing, because people want views, they want likes, they want notoriety, and they will often put their crimes on social media, which is actually, it's a good thing in the sense that a lot of people have been convicted of crimes because the evidence is there, but it's shocking, and in the course of my ministry, I've done a lot of weekly visitation at nursing homes, members of the congregation who were there either as residents or, temporary there for rehab, after hospitalizations. And so I spent a lot of time in many, many nursing homes, and that's the absolute opposite of what should be happening. This should be a place where they're receiving good quality of care, where it's a safe environment. Yeah, Jennifer would have a field day with that if she was on this morning.
Well, the thing
But
about
it's
it,
crazy.
so they come out and said, here's what they said. They came out and said the center says it has a zero tolerance policy for mistreating of those in our care. Of course, every facility should have that, and it was already in place. And they're working to implement leadership changes. Good idea. Additional staff training. Good idea. And rigorous vetting process for all new and existing employees. I would figure they had a rigorous vetting processes, but working in the healthcare field as
there's so much
nurse,
turnover. There's so much turnover in the nursing homes. Unfortunately, it makes it tough. But it shouldn't mean that your standards are lower.
True. Well, the love has grown cold, and of course, these three individuals thought it was a hoot getting folks with dementia and Alzheimer's to fight, and then bet on it, and then absolutely I don't know where, where's the intelligence? There's no intelligence there. Oh, this is a good idea. Let's get them to fight, and we'll film it.
Isaiah 5, is very clear about, woe to those who call evil good and good evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we live in this world that's upside down, it's opposite world. And this story is case in point, it's the exact opposite of what anybody would imagine happening at a nursing home. And, to basically manipulate and use anyone, but especially those with dementia who probably don't even understand, what exactly is happening. You're further traumatizing them, and you're traumatizing any residents that are witnessing this that do have a sound mind. I mean, I just can't imagine what kind of an environment that would breed. But you're right. I mean, where's the intelligence? Where's the common sense? Where's the decency? Well, let's be honest, right? I mean, I'm sure you would agree with me. It's lawlessness, it's hearts grown cold. It's seared consciences. It's all of these things. And I imagine that this is not an isolated thing. We know about it. It seems like a shocker, but there's got to be other things like this happening in facilities. Did you see that lady who was either a daycare worker or babysitter or whatever that broke a bunch of kids' legs, arms and legs and bones? And I mean, that kind of thing is probably happening more than we know. And that's a sad commentary on the state of our society.
I can see it. And it's the demise and the moral decay of our leaders in this country. Not only that, a breakdown of the family. There's so many signs and symptoms in society that we can point to. But I saw that where they were breaking legs. I don't know. The love has grown cold.
Yes.
And then, of course, what a depressing thing to be talking about. But the next story, of course, it just leads to the demise of moral decay. Saw this coming out of Canada. I'll pull this up real quick. Air Canada just announced it's no longer, when they announce people to come on the plane, they're not going to say ladies and gentlemen anymore because they're now gender neutral. I saw in July 2017, the famed London Underground train went that way. It said it would cease using the time-honored ladies and gentlemen greetings after months of pressure from the LGBTQ groups. 4 months after that, New York City's Metropolitan Transportation Authority said it no longer would use ladies and gentlemen greetings on subways. And of course, the left-wing talking head explained in a video saying it's the word guys is demeaning and lazy and inconsiderate. And now Air Canada came out this past weekend and said they're no longer going to use ladies and gentlemen as their greeting passengers. It's going to be neutral gender. Neutral gender. And of course, we figure out why, are three women having geriatrics fight. This is our society.
Yes.
And this is where it's going. And this, the Father has called men and women out of the world to preach against it. And the world's going to hate you for it. We're probably going to get shadow banned for us even talking about this.
Yeah.
The last time I put an LGBTQ thing up on the thing, it was like, it had the big mark on it and shutting it down, taking it off.
Oh yeah. Well, it is indicative of our society, but it's also, as you're well aware, there is an agenda, and it does involve people and ideologies, but at the root of that, we understand that Satan and his evil workers are definitely not only supporting this, but instigating these things. And so there's a lot of demonic undertones with all of this, and but it is an agenda. And it's interesting because I mentioned the homecoming that my son was on the court, and there was one of the young men who was selected is openly gay, and he was getting a lot of vocal people about it, and a lot of support. A lot of people thought that they were going to select him as the homecoming king, because of the society and the hip, the hipster nature of, hey, I'm gay, I must be cool or hip. And honestly, I kind of thought they were going to crown this openly gay person as king, just because of the way society was. That's not how it worked out. And it's it was interesting, John, because I was watching his reaction, and my son didn't get crowned king either. It was somebody else that was kind of an underdog nobody thought would be crowned. Sometimes that's how it works out. But I was watching him and his mother's reaction, because he was kind of going around the school, and he was like, basically, I got this in the bag, because I'm gay. And the culture, supporting that. He felt that he was a shoo-in. Anyway, I was watching him and his mother's reaction, and they were just kind of like stunned silence for a few moments. And then they began clapping for the person who won. But again, it's pervasive in the culture. It's an agenda. And it really still is, this, John, it is a very, very vocal minority. But what adds fuel to their fire is that you have a growing number of people who don't practice such things, but they are actively supporting it. They are supporting these things. And so that's what gives it more power and more control.
Well, I'm looking at the news, and of course, Pete Buttigieg, I think I got his name right, mayor out of Indiana, who is openly gay in a relationship. He's running for the presidency of the United States. Well, I'm looking at the liberal left, progressive, and that's what and there's nothing, it's just socialism, it's communism, that's what it is. That's the Democratic Party. I said it, they're it's out of the cat's out of the bag. That's how I feel about the Democratic Party at this moment. However, now they're eating their own. Mr. Buttigieg came out yesterday and he said a mildly bad thing about Elizabeth Warren in the news media, and he absolutely got slammed by Adam Green. Adam Green is the committee founder of the Progressive for Change campaign, and it's like they're turning in on themselves. It's like that's what evil does. to
Yeah.
outdo the other one. So he was in the news, and of course he's openly gay, but even for the progressives to go after somebody like that because he said something demeaning about, Elizabeth Warren is like, whoa,
Yeah.
I thought they would defend this guy tooth and nail, but they're eating their own right now. It's crazy to
Yeah,
watch.
that's a really good point because yes, the evil is organized and evil is unified in the major things that it's trying to accomplish. But like you said, I mean, there is fighting and squabbling and um, stepping on people, to get to where you want to get. And I believe there are factions, within different groups that represent evil. So, every once in a while they do show their true colors and show, how they treat their own. And then it makes you ask the question, why would you want to be part of that? Um, it's just nobody wins in that. There's constant sacrifices that they are making, and literally they are sacrificing, you know, their
Well,
their loved ones in all of this.
it goes to the point, of course, reading scripture and reading from Genesis to Revelation, we understand that there's principalities over
Yes.
different nations. Nations rise and fall. It's just the nature of the world in which we live. And yet you
Yeah.
see these principalities and powers overtaking another country. So you know that there's a spiritual war going on in the spiritual, and it just manifests here. And of course, we can see it played out. And yet we think all of evil, is on the same team. Well, they're evil, and at the same time, they try to outdo the last evil thing that was done. And
Oh
see,
yeah.
it just gets more evil as you go.
It's like they're bucking for points, within the evil empire there. So, but
Exactly.
yeah, it's and we know too that it seems like a lot of times what we think is shocking is it's purposeful that they're putting certain things out there, but everything does serve its purpose, for their agenda. So some stuff you think is, oh wow, I can't believe they leaked that. Well, some stuff is leaked on purpose because there's an angle there. But yeah, they can't hide their true colors. Evil is exposed, and we're told, in Ephesians to expose the deeds of darkness. And so that's what a lot of channels and ministries and content providers do. And as you know, that's where the real pressure comes. I mean, there will be persecution directly related to our stand against these evils.
It's coming, folks, and we need to be
Yeah.
grounded in Christ Jesus so we can withstand it. And
Amen.
that is
Yeah.
an absolute truth. It's talking about truth. ABC was in the news this weekend. They had to issue an apology for outright lying. It's almost like from Adam Schiff to Nancy Pelosi to ABC. ABC aired footage, and it came out of Kentucky. This story comes out of Kentucky. They were purporting to feature footage from northern Syria when in fact they were showing footage from here, a firing range here in Kentucky, and they used it as saying, oh, look at the poor Kurds, they're getting their, and of course they are poor Kurds over there.
Yeah.
They got the raw end of the deal, but at the same time, ABC is using footage from Kentucky's firing range to say, hey, look at the devastation that's going on. So they had to issue a I'm sorry.
Wow.
And of course, I'm glad they did, but at the same time, they knew exactly what they were showing until they got caught.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's sad because I think, we all have seen the degrading of the news media, of actual journalism, and what that started out to be. I mean, there's always been evil elements, even in journalism, but I'm saying we can all understand there's a huge difference between the type of reporting that you used to have in the 50s and 60s and 70s and the type of reporting today. And the standards are, of course, in the gutter. And as most truthers are aware, just a couple of agencies own all of these media outlets, and so you'll often have a repeated thread of certain things that they're pushing. But yeah, every once in a while they do get busted.
They got busted like Adam Schiff did this past week. Speaking of Turkey, speaking of the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and what's going over in the Straits of Hormuz and the Suez Canal and all of that good stuff, looks like Mr. Gorka has left the president's administration. That came over the news. And when I got up this morning, I had to throw this one in because I went,
Hmm.
John Bolton left and now Gorka has left. He says he can help the president more so outside of the administration. I think he's leaving because everybody's getting subpoenaed
Yeah.
from the Democrats. However, it's interesting that Bolton left and now Gorka has left. And of course, we got out of Syria, which was a neocon war started by the Obama administration. Of course, we can go back then, but I thought it was interesting that he is now leaving the administration. There is a
Hmm.
deep state war going on, and it's being played out in front of all of us. Have you had a chance to look? Are you concerned as an American
Yeah,
citizen?
I wondered about that. I'll be honest with you, John. I'm not really sure exactly, what I believe about Trump and different things, but I've seen enough. I've seen enough things that kind of maybe show that that deep state war is happening. Obviously, only the father really knows what's going on. Some people, have talked about Trump being a Cyrus, figure. I don't know about that. Maybe. He certainly doesn't seem to be, um, as righteous as I would think of somebody being a Cyrus, but the father can use all types, and he even used a guy named Nebuchadnezzar, um, to create his will, to make sure that his will was done. And so it is very interesting dynamic to watch. I don't follow, Q and all of that, but I see comments about people
Hmm.
and what they have to say, and it is very interesting. I guess, for me, I haven't had as much time invested in those things, but I think that a lot of what we see in the Bible is being played out, and prophecy and things. And of course, everybody has their take on that, what this represents, what that represents. But certainly, as a baseline, we do see that battle of good and evil,
Right.
and certainly this country is. I mean, if you want to control the world, you've got to control the United States. I
Yeah.
mean, you're not going to be able to do much if the United States is not under your grasp. And so I do believe that as much as we talk about the evil and the elites and the dark forces, I do believe there are good forces, people trying. And maybe that's part of this. I don't know.
Well, the father does keep a remnant
Yes.
engaged, and of course,
Yeah.
being watching the news as I have over the last several weeks, day in and day out, I'm seeing the patterns. I know the Western Hemisphere is under attack right now with
Yeah.
Great Britain going through the Brexit issue and them
Mm.
dealing with progressive limb dibs over there. And of course, they just had a Queen's speech yesterday. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we here in America, our politicians are at each other's throats more so than they have ever been in the past, and it's very, very vicious.
Oh yeah.
With the Biden issue and Hunter issue and Ukraine and everything that's been coming out, there is a cultural war going on in the United States for
Oh yeah.
governments and in Great Britain, and it just seems like uh, whoever controls the Western countries, the Western Bloc, of course, like
Mm.
you said, it goes back to what you said. That's what it's all about: is gaining control and controlling its people,
Oh yeah.
and that's what this is
Eh,
all about.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's a power struggle. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you and I don't see. That's the difficulty. It's like sifting through. Okay, what's true and what's not. What stuff is planted and what stuff is genuine. And I guess I keep going back to we have a call in Scripture to be wise as serpents, yet harmless as doves. We do need to try to have an understanding. I always thought, where it talks in the Bible about the men of Issachar. It doesn't say much about those guys, but it says that basically, in a nutshell, they were spiritually wise, and they knew the times and they knew what Israel should do. And I think there's some value in seeking to be like the men of Issachar and like others who uh, pay attention. And I think prayer is so hugely important. I know a lot of truthers, they say, hey, man, I'm done with this two-party system. They don't vote. And I respect whatever a person's conscience leads them to, but definitely prayer. We have to be praying, and we need to pray for Trump, and we need to pray for, the House, and we need to pray for Congress. Because not because we necessarily believe in these people. We're not saying to put our faith in man, but we put our faith in God, in the Father, right? And we understand that prayer is powerful, and sometimes He will move directly due to the fact that His people are petitioning Him. So we need to petition Him on behalf of our country and on behalf of these world events. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of power dynamics here, and that's what people are after. They want that power.
Well, I'm going to stress what Nate just said. Pray, pray, stay informed, and pray. Watch men and
Yeah.
women on the wall, and be alert and be ready to give a testimony when the Father opens that door to you guys.
Amen.
We do
Yeah.
live in a world that's kind of messed up, and of course, that's the world we live in, and the principalities that oversee and rule. But we ultimately serve Yahweh. We serve Christ Jesus, and we're to be that set apart people so they can see Him, and we can
Yes.
be that beacon for Him. So that good word. There's nothing
Amen.
much I can add to that. So I will
Yeah.
say, moving on. Of course, I was going to bring up all kinds of stuff, but President Xi was in the news. This is what you remember. Tiananmen Square. Me and you are that old to
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
You remember
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah.
President Xi came out yesterday, and this is what he said. He said people who engaged in separatist behavior in China will end in crushed bodies and shattered bones. That is the
Wow.
president of the Chinese Communist Party saying that. Are we
Wow.
up for another Tiananmen Square? I mean, how long will he be
Wow.
patient with those folks in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, I did do a little bit of reading up on some of that. It does seem like, with the protests and different things. I mean, it's ramping up, and of course they want more, autonomous control. They want less of all this economic, pressure, and again, that goes to power and control as well. But yeah, that's pretty strong language. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than that. We're going to be crushing bones.
Well, I was wondering how long it would take the Communist Party to deal with this. And of course, Hong Kong, we know they used to be a colony of the UK. They
Yeah.
had rights and freedoms that they got
Yeah.
used to, and now, since Great Britain gave back Hong Kong to Beijing,
Yeah.
little by little, inch by inch, they've been taking the rights away to the people in Hong
And that's
Kong.
been, I think, about 22 years or
About that,
so.
I think it was like in
So
'97 is when they switched
yeah,
over.
so they've been working hard to chip away at those freedoms that they have enjoyed, and so it's no surprise, that there be people that were super upset, and they see where this is going. They understand what will happen if they
Well,
lose those freedoms.
it got my attention when President Z said that, and it was quoted from the Associated Press. He is about fed up, and when the Communist Party gets fed up with you, guess what? They don't
Yeah.
care what the world thinks. They
Heads are
don't.
gonna roll, man. Yeah.
Heads are gonna roll. Speaking of, for you folks who live in California, there was some news that came out yesterday, and I just want to bring it up. California Governor Gavin Newsom approved some strictest gun laws and gun seizure powers in the U.S. Friday, signing into law 15 different pieces of gun legislation. I'm just going to read this out from the NPR. Newsom has reinforced a red flag law that enables educators, employees, and co-workers to inform on gun owners and request that a restraining order be placed on them. And of course, we talked about this story a week or so ago, me and Dan Bedondi. And we talked about the fact that these red laws, now social media can be used. And of course, with these laws being passed in California now, if you're on social media and somebody doesn't like you, they can report you to authorities. And all of a sudden, they're knocking down your door at 3 a.m. in the morning, which is absolutely scary.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, it's fear. It's guerrilla tactics, but we see that Jennifer and I have seen that in the social work, field where people will report, their ex for something. And, again, it's just power and control. But yeah, California, I mean, I have a sister that lives in California. I've got friends in California, supporters, and friends of the ministry that are in California. And I know they love their state, and it's beautiful, especially Southern California. Was there in February for the Question Everything conference. But I tell you what, I feel for those folks, and a lot of them have moved or are trying to move, because it's just such a challenging environment. But yeah, Gavin Newsom, I mean, he's been on the forefront of a lot of negative change and ungodly, pushes. And of course, he signed the thing against the vaccination, those that would want to have an exemption. I saw a post by some people that are truthers that said, okay, that's the final straw, man. Like I don't want to, but I'm going to transition out of my home state of California, because for them, losing those exemptions for vaccinations has been a horrible situation. But yeah, Gavin Newsom, man, he's a piece of work.
He is. The legislation, I did a little more digging into the legislation that they passed, includes a bill, and listen to this, guys, that would make these restraining orders last up to 5 years. So you've got a stigma now following you for 5 years. And, they can back off and ease the tension off of your family, but it lasts for 5 years. That is a stigma now on you and your family, where they can come anytime they want without a warrant and knocking down your door and just scaring your family half to death, which is like, they are absolutely out of their minds out there. Seems like both ends of the country. Crazy. You got the East and West end, just like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. And everybody.
And they're trying to do this, John, they're trying to, they use these outsides, and they're just trying to squeeze, and here most of us are stuck somewhere in the middle, and we're just like, oh my goodness.
Well, of course, we're going to end it. And my favorite topic of all time is, of course, Brexit. I don't know why. It's like days of our lives. I sit there and watch the UK Parliament, House of Lords, which is absolutely useless. It's like almost watching the Senate. And then you got the House of Commons, which you need a bag of popcorn and a glass of tea to sit down, because it's absolutely entertaining. However, I'm following it because it's mirroring what's happening here in this country, as far as the liberal left pushing an ideology of socialism, communism on the people to control. And I'm seeing it happening over there, and I'm doing the comparison. So I'm watching this comparison. And yesterday, the Queen came out and did her Queen speech. And if you watch any of the Great Britain's government, it is absolutely fool's gold. It's what I call fool's gold. So you have Parliament, which is the House of Commons, and then you've got the House of Lords, who's appointed by the Queen and appointed by the bishops. So they're all appointed, nobody's elected. And then you've got the Queen, who approves every law that's passed, right? The House of Commons are always up in a roar passing laws, but they can't get anything passed without the House of Lords and then the Queen saying, okay. And I'm wondering where the Queen lands on this whole Brexit deal. And yesterday's Queen's speech sounds like she wants out. So, and of course, she is in her upper 90s. And if you look at any of the power struggle in the monarchy, you've got a king that's coming up, and I'm wondering if he's going to exercise his rights as king when he becomes king, and negating the entire thing. I don't know. I'm watching it. I don't know. Have you watched any of this go on?
I haven't paid a lot of attention, but I do understand that, it kind of started out as more economic situation, and now it's just become so political, and again, it's a power struggle. And I mean, there's so much going on over in the UK and in Europe, just everything is crumbling, all the good values, all the spiritual elements that used to be there have just been under attack for so long. And a lot of people will tell you, if you want to see where the United States is going to be in the future, just look to where the UK and Europe is now. So it is interesting to kind of watch those things. And I figured the Queen, she had to be upper 90s, man. I mean, she just seems to be around forever, although we know she won't be around forever. So it'll be an interesting development, and to see what the next leadership decides on this. But isn't there some big thing happening in October? Is there a deadline?
October 31st, they are supposed to leave the EU bloc, the 27-nation bloc of the European Union. And they voted for this in 2016. Of course, President Trump won the presidency in 2016. The referendum, 50 in Great Britain, the people voted to leave the EU. The main issue that they had with the EU is that Parliament and the House of Lords cannot pass any laws without EU's permission. And it's almost become like Rome. And so and it's just coming out now that the European Union wants to devise a military, 60,000 strong, for EU use, not UN, not the NATO, but for EU use. And Great Britain is saying we don't want anybody controlling our military, period. They have say. And of course, the United States takes it up like that. So the big issue is gaining control back over its own laws in the United Kingdom. And that's the big struggle. And I guess that's the struggle here as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I think we've knocked out all the news stories I had. I do, before we head out, I want people to, and again, thank you guys for putting Mr. and Mrs. Wolf's ministry into the chat room. I appreciate that. If you guys could put that up for me one more time and tell people where they can find you and the book.
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to FiredforTRUTH.org. You can just click on the link there, or if you're on a smartphone, you'll probably just have to click on the picture of the book. That'll get you directly to lulu.com, and you could order that book. You could message me directly if you have any questions, Nate@FiredforTRUTH.org, or hit me up on Facebook. I do use Messenger. I try to return all messages, although it's getting harder and harder as more people know about my situation and reach out to me. But yeah, I just really appreciate the time with you and for your help in supporting our ministry. And I'm very excited about Life Matters with Nate and Jen. We'll be uploading our new video tonight about 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be addressing boundaries for married couples, so boundaries with other individuals, coworkers, friends, social media. So please check that out and give us some, feedback, give us suggestions, and above all, pray for us, please, and that, and, consider supporting us somehow, either one time or monthly with our ministry and our family's needs. It's been a wild ride this year, but we've definitely seen the Father's hand. And so we're just taking it one day at a time, John, relying on his provision, relying on his direction, and trying to stay prayerful, trying to stay in the Word. So that's what we're trying to be about, one day at a time.
Amen. I want to thank Starla for putting up Nate's website in the chat room for everybody. Also be looking on John and Patricia Hall. We'll be posting the show that they upload tonight, and on NYSTV Fellowship. Be watching for it there. If you would tag me in it, I would appreciate it. Awesome. And that way we can get people in front of that. I think having experienced and mature husband and wife show is a blessing, and I'm looking forward to that. So Nate, thank you for joining me this morning. I'm going to ask you to come back. I'm putting you on the spot. If you would get up at the butt crack of dawn, I said it, and join me with a cup of coffee. And I would love to just shoot the news with you one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would love to do that, man. This is wonderful. And I want to just give a shout out to everybody at NYSTV and John Pounders and him, his family. Everybody has been gracious to us, very supportive. And, we got to work together. We got to help each other out because we're on the same team. We serve the same Messiah. And we have to, we gotta come together and help each other out because we are very few, and there's a lot coming against us. So it is great to be able to fellowship and to support one another. So thank you guys so much.
Before we end the show, I want everybody to also know that Dan Bedondi tonight is live at 9 p.m. with Gary Wayne. Just want to give a shout out to Dan Bedondi. He's going to have Genesis 6. Conspiracy on, and that's later tonight at 9. But be looking for the show coming up on our Facebook page, on John and Patricia Halls, and on the fellowship page. Nate Wolf, thank you for joining me this morning, and I think we've done all the damage that you and I can do this morning.
Wow. Yeah.
Time to get back to Sukkot.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen.
All right, here we go, guys. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I believe Kevin Stoll is going to be joining me. See you in the morning. Shalom, one and all.